What's going on, everybody? Well, as promised, we're going to do our Q&A for reaching 2,000 subscribers. So once again, thank you to everybody who is a subscriber, who likes, comments, shares, does anything to help this channel. You guys are the reason why I'm at 2,000 subscribers, and way faster than I ever thought I'd be at 2,000 subscribers. So thank you guys again, and let's get to your questions. I got a ton of them. So in no particular order, I just kind of copied and pasted them from YouTube and everything. So don't be upset if yours ends up at the bottom. I'm not ranking them by the best questions. It's just however it kind of fell. Starting off with John Cleary, and he asks, if they were to redo Friday the 13th, what would you like them to do this time around? Well, I actually was talking about this months ago on a video of mine, because at some point they were trying to do like, go back to the beginning, you know, like they love doing that now. Go back to the beginning and tell why they're evil, and they're going to focus on Jason's father and the relationship there, and fuck all that shit, okay? This is a Friday the 13th movie, and I apologize if I offend any Friday the 13th fans by saying this. This is the easiest and most simple franchise to write for. I could write a Friday the 13th movie that would be profitable in a busy weekend. Just in between doing chores, I could write it. It's fucking simple. Friday the 13th, you got Jason chasing teenagers. This is all you need to do. Focus on creative kills. That is the number one thing that they need to do with any slasher, really, but especially a Friday the 13th movie. Come up with some really creative kills, like kills that we have not seen before, ones that are going to be badass and make you squirm and everything. Then write the movie around that. You can keep it simple. You can just go back to the same old tried and true formula of kids around a campfire talking about the legend of Jason, and then Jason comes and starts taking their ass out in Act 2 and 3 until a big confrontation with whoever's left at the end. It's a simple formula. Yes, it may not be the most ambitious thing in the world, but it's a Friday the 13th movie. So my thing would just be focus on creative kills, keep it simple, and just deliver on a badass Jason. I think Derek Mears in the remake he's my favorite Jason. I think he's an absolutely badass Jason to have, so I would hope they would bring him back, but that's my take. Creative kills and keep it simple. PF Games asks, why are you such a big Freddy fan, even though Chucky was the first icon that you saw? So yes, I've said before in my Child's Play 3 review, Child's Play 3 is actually the first horror movie I ever watched as a kid. That's what introduced me to horror, what introduced me to slashers, and what got me to be the horror nut that I am today. So why do I always say that Freddy is my favorite? Well, I transitioned immediately from Chucky movies to all slasher movies, pretty much. Anything that my dad had in his VHS collection, I would watch it. So we had the first 3 Chucky movies. He had every single Freddy movie except for Freddy's Dead, which I'm kind of glad I didn't subject myself to that shit back when I was a kid. But there was more Freddy movies to watch than there was Chucky movies. And honestly, just what I love so much about Freddy is that, to me, he's the scariest of any of the horror icons. Like, he's definitely the most evil, the darkest, whenever he is dark. Don't get me wrong. There's some movies like, 4 through 6 that he's not dark and scary at all. But just the concept of the character is the darkest there. But then you also get personality. You get somebody that toys with his victims. You get somebody that has great lines. And especially in the first 3 movies, they're still very dark in the way that they're delivered. So I love the look of Freddy. I think that he just is just awesome. The way that he looks, he's scary, he's fucking mysterious. I would not want Freddy chasing me, even though he's probably a 1.5 feet shorter than me. The weapon, the glove, just the whole concept of Nightmare and Nightmare on Elm Street, just you're not safe because eventually you will fall asleep. All of that put together is what makes me love Freddy and the Nightmare on Elm Street series the most. But with that being said, guys, I mean, Chucky is like close second. Like, you couldn't fit a razor blade between my fandom between Freddy and Chucky. They're that fucking close. So, good question, but that is why. Guitar, bass, piano, drums asks, what is your favorite movie? My favorite movie is probably the first Die Hard. That's the answer that I usually give. It may surprise people that it's not a horror movie, but yeah, the first Die Hard movie is a movie that I can literally watch 15 times a year and never get tired of it. I still crack up at the same spots. I still think that the action is awesome. I still think the thrills are there. I love the character of John McClane. I love the villain of Hans Gruber. Everything about that movie, that's just one of those flawless movies to me that I just constantly revisit. And no matter how many times I revisit it, the movie is always awesome to me. So the first Die Hard is my answer for that. Dylan asks, now, I understand how you feel about prequel movies, but hear me out on this one. All right, I'm hearing you out. How would you feel about a Chucky prequel series where it's Charles Lee Ray whenever he was the Lakeshore Strangler? We can see Not only what events in his life occurred to make him so demented, but we can also see how he got associated with Tiffany and how he learned all of that voodoo magic that transferred him into the doll in the first place. I think that'd be a stellar idea, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So as he was kind of alluding to in the first question, I have said before, I am not a fan, and I said at the beginning of this video too, I'm not a fan of horror icon prequels and origin stories. I'm not. Doesn't matter if their their origin story is fascinating. I don't like going back and seeing it. I don't like ruining the mystery. I don't like having answers given to me when I can come up with good answers enough on my own that most of the time end up being more satisfying than the ones that the writers in Hollywood decide to give us. And I have not seen a prequel to a horror icon that I love enough to say that that movie is justified. Now, yes, I liked the recent Leatherface movie. Most people don't, but it was good enough for me. There wasn't any answers that I couldn't have come up with on my own, though. I didn't really care for Rob Zombie's origin story for Michael Myers. I actually think it ruins the mystique of that character. I'm just not a fan of it at all. So, with that being said, that still applies to Chucky. Yes, there are some probably great stories you could tell about Charles Lee Ray and have Brad Dourif there, and you could probably come up with some really interesting answers as to how he became a strangler and how he met the voodoo guy in the first Child's Play movie, and how he met Tiffany and then broke it off with her. There's tons of things that you could give probably a decent enough movie, and possibly even a great movie if you had a good writer that you could bring to the screen. And don't get me wrong, if you sat a movie in front of me and said, hey, nobody knows about this, but it's a movie they made about Charles Lee Ray, it's a prequel to Child's Play, you want to watch it? You goddamn right I'm going to watch it. But do I want it? No. For the reason that I just stated before, and two is because, for my own selfish reasons, I want the story to progress and I want the story to go forward. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about Freddy, Michael, Jason, Chucky, Hellraiser, fucking anybody, Leatherface. I would much rather see something new and something progress in the storyline than to go back and give a storyline that at the end we know where things are going to end up. So it's not really going to add anything to the lore. It's not going to add anything to our experience. I would much rather than put their time and effort into something new versus spend a couple years going into that, and then we have to wait 4 to 6 years to get something that progresses the story. So, good idea, but would I want it? Probably not. Metal Horror Pack asks, congrats, Cody. Thank you. Here's my questions. Multiple questions. Have you ever seen Disney's My Favorite Martian? I think that's the one with Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd. I have seen it, yes. I haven't seen it in a long time. That and Jeff Daniels, I believe. I remember it being funny when I was a kid, but I haven't seen it in years. What is your favorite Jak and Daxter game? They're all really good, but probably the third one. The first one is a very simple, almost kiddie kind of platformer game. The second one ramps things up, makes things much darker, much more adult, and brings this open world aspect to it. And Jak 3 kind of brings the elements of Jak 2 over, but keeps a lot more of the fun lightheartedness of the first one and scales the difficulty way down, which is actually a question I'm going to get into later on. So I think Jak 3 is probably my favorite. What is your favorite Silent Hill game? I haven't played too many of them actually, and I was one of the few people who missed Silent Hill 2. I think that's probably everybody's answer for the best one. Somehow I missed that game. I played the first one on PlayStation, and that's my answer, is that's my favorite one, because that game actually scared the shit out of me back in the day. On the original PlayStation, one of my first survival horror experiences, because I also missed Resident Evil on the PlayStation somehow. But the other Silent Hill games I've played, there hasn't been too many good ones. There was Silent Hill Homecoming, Silent Hill The Room. Yeah, not a huge fan of those. So the first one. Have you seen Disney's Inspector Gadget? I used to watch the cartoon a lot when I was a kid, and if you're talking about the live action movie with Matthew Broderick, I have seen that. I actually remember, I think it was McDonald's that had the toys for a while, or the month or so leading up to the movie, you would get to go on each week that have a different piece of Inspector Gadget. And I remember I got all the pieces because I would go and I'd beg my grandma to take me and get all the different toys. So he had the little helicopter hat and the spring arm and all kinds of crazy stuff. What is your favorite Wrong Turn movie? The only one that I like is the first one. I've seen 3 of them. 2 is okay. Henry Rollins is kind of a cool character in that movie, but it's not great. The first one I actually like quite a bit, so only the first one is the ones that I would even recommend. My favorite would have to be the first one. Well, hey, we agree then. What video games made you rage the most? Jak 2. So, as I alluded to in your first question, yeah, Jak 2 is easily the most difficult game I've ever played in my life. The most difficult game I've ever beaten, and proud to say, the most difficult game I've ever gotten the Platinum Trophy for. The difficulty in that game is just ridiculous. I don't remember 100% what it was about it. I think it's just, if I remember correctly, the most unforgiving thing about it was the checkpoints. Like if you died, it sent you back like an hour and a half back. And there was some really, really like platform difficulty where like you jump a little bit too far and you fall in a pit, or you know, you're trying to balance on something and you walk just a little bit to the left and fall and die. Like shit, cheap shit like that. Jak 2 is riddled with it. It's still fun, still a great game. And it was fun enough for me to keep playing it, but I don't think I've ever cussed out my TV more than when I was playing Jak 2. What was your most satisfying boss fight in a game? Most satisfying in the sense of like I've been trying to beat this son of a bitch for hours and I finally did it. Any of the bosses from Bloodborne. I haven't played any of the other Dark Souls games, so I'm sure maybe those are even harder, but Bloodborne was kind of my first Dark Souls-ish experience. And man, you're talking about unforgiving boss battles, like to the point where like you have to like build your character up and like mine things and go through and explore and find weapons and powers and, you know, build your guy up in the experience before you can even go take a boss on, to the point where you have to do so much work to get this boss just even halfway down in his health. When you finally do beat them, man, what a good feeling in that game. As far as most satisfying, like some of the most fun boss fights, the best boss fights in the world to me will always be the first Metal Gear Solid. So, do you prefer animated or live action Disney movies? I mean, I like them both. I've never been a huge Disney person. Even when I was a kid, I always was more of a mature movie fan. But there's animated Disney movies that I'll always love. I'll always revisit, like a Goofy movie, Aladdin, stuff like that. But live action ones can be good too. There's a lot of live action ones like, I mean, stuff from the 90s was always really good. If you're talking about live action remakes, I thought that the Jungle Book remake was awesome. I'm really looking forward to the Lion King. So even those aren't really live action, they're more just computer generated remakes. But I like them both. I don't really have a preference. What was the most terrifying game you ever played? The first Silent Hill for sure is up there, and recently was Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, because I played it with actual VR the entire time. I actually put a review out for it and have some footage in there of me playing it where I like jump and freak out and stuff. That game is intense. Trying to play that shit with earbuds, like noise canceling earbuds in, and the little VR mask and everything, and every time you turn a corner something jumps out at you, or you know, you hear noises around you, like that game freaks you the fuck out. So that's probably the most terrifying game I've ever played, just because of the nature of the experience. Thanks for your questions, man. Moving on to, I apologize if I say your name wrong, Vina Dant Animos. And they ask, what are your top 5 bands of all time? Stone Sour, Alter Bridge, Metallica definitely, Alice in Chains, and probably Godsmack, even though I like their earlier stuff more than I do their later stuff. But I mean, I love bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. I like a lot of 80s bands like Dokken and stuff like that. So I mean, I got a pretty varied favorite bands, but the top 5, that's probably accurate, those first 5 that I named. Will you do some music-related reviews, new albums, singles? I have, and I need to get back to doing some more of them. Unfortunately for me, it seems like there's just no good music out there hardly ever anymore. Like, as far as bands that I like, maybe 2 albums a year do I get to look forward to. Everything else, like, I'm extremely picky about music. I will watch movies that I don't think are good to give them a chance. I will not listen to albums that I don't think are going to be good. Like, I'm not going to listen to Jay-Z or Beyonce or, you know, freaking Luke Bryan or anybody that I know I just don't like, because maybe this album will bring me in. I don't give people a chance after I just know I don't like their music. So if Stone Sour or Alter Bridge or Metallica or somebody like that isn't coming out with an album that year, I'm probably not going to listen to it. So I would like to do more music reviews, and I'll probably try to find a way to do more. Maybe I'll do some throwback album reviews or something like that. But yes, I do plan on doing more. What did you think of Stone Sour's Hydrograd album? It's a good question, actually, because that's the one album review that I should have done that I missed, because it dropped right when I was moving from my apartment into this house, so I didn't get any reviews done. And by the time I got back in front of the camera, I didn't see any point in talking about it, because everybody pretty much had moved on from that album. I liked it. I went back and forth with that album a lot. When I first got it, I didn't really care for it because it's so different. It's the most unique Stone Sour album they've ever put out. It's a lot of different styles of music. It's very different than anything they've ever done before. And different is good because I like bands that try new things. I like bands that are confident enough to try different genres and do what they want. That's one thing that Metallica's always had the balls to do that people always cuss at them for, but I like that. I like when bands can just kind of broaden their horizons, but because they do something different doesn't mean I'm automatically going to like it, even though they're my favorite band of all time. I like the album because there's some songs that are very good. The songwriting is definitely there. The musicianship is definitely there. There are some songs, probably 3 or 4 of them, that I will listen to constantly. Like if I made a mix album, they would definitely be on there. But the majority of the album are songs that they're pretty good. They're not songs that I necessarily go back like I'm dying to hear it. There are definitely a lot of songs that I'll skip past. Not to say that they're bad songs, they're just not really my style. So I do like the album. If I was to rank it, I would put, I think that their self-titled album is their worst album, even though it's still a good album. But I think that's their least of my favorite albums. I would put Hydrograd just one above that. So my second to least favorite album they've ever put out, but still a good album. Lil G0803, for those that don't know, my little brother. Garrett asks, what are some games that you would say could have a remake or is heavily underrated? I'm dying for a Metal Gear Solid remake. They've got a lot of HD remakes coming out nowadays. That's kind of the thing. And it is a cash grab, but it is also cool for those of us that like those old classic games, like the Crash Bandicoot remaster that they put out. That's awesome. Like stuff that they can do like that. If they could do the original Metal Gear Solid and make it an HD remake with all of the graphics and the engines and everything that they use in games today, man, I would put $100 down for that game in a heartbeat without even thinking about it. That's my favorite game of all time. So that's a game that I definitely want an HD remake for. Another one would be Silent Hill 2, so I can actually finally play the damn thing. I'm not going to go back and play like the PS2 version or anything like that, because trying to go back and play some of those classic PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 games with the old engines and everything, it's hard. It shouldn't be that hard, but it's hard. And games that I think is heavily underrated. There's a game, what the hell is it called? Enslaved Odyssey to the West. That's the name of the game. I wanted to say Uncharted, and I knew that was wrong, but Enslaved was the name I was getting hung up on. But it's a 3D adventure game where you play kind of like this caveman-looking guy, but it's the future. Like, there's tons of futuristic technology, but apparently humanity's been wiped out, so it's like a post-apocalyptic prehistoric future with modern technology, if that makes any sense. It was a really cool game, really fun, had a great story. The ending was a little bit wonky, but it shocks me that that game never gets talked about because it was so good. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind as far as a heavily underrated game. I'm sure there's plenty more out there I can't think of at the moment. The Mad Gamer asks, are you ever going to try the Friday the 13th game anytime soon? Also, when are you going to start the Friday the 13th series? I have played the Friday the 13th game. I actually have a review out for it. I just got bored with it really quick, which is one of my criticisms for the game. And I kind of knew that going into the game. I knew it was going to be a concept that was going to be fun for a week or so, and then it's going to get boring. I'm not a big online gameplay guy because I do get bored with it very quickly. Just rematch, rematch, rematch. I get bored with that. It was a cool enough game. I think that it's a love letter to fans. I think if you're not a Friday the 13th fan, you're not going to like the game. It's not a very well-made game, but it is a decent enough game for horror fans and Friday the 13th fans. So check out my full review. I go way more in depth. As far as when I'm going to start the Friday the 13th series, probably at the beginning of next year sometime. I'm not intimidated by the Friday the 13th franchise, but I'm a little bit gun shy to announce that I'm starting it because those movies, there's tons of them, and I'm not a very passionate Friday the 13th fan. So I did the Freddy series because I love it. I did the Chucky series because I love it. I did the Texas Chainsaw franchise because I'm a pretty big fan of that. When I get back to going to do the Halloween franchise, same thing. I've always been a Michael Myers fan. Jason's the one slasher franchise that I've never really been that passionate about, so I don't know. It's going to be hard to review them because I don't think any of them are great, but whenever I rewatch them, I'll give a very honest review, and maybe I'll like them more than I remember liking them. So I'm probably sometime next year I'll start that. I'll probably film and record like maybe 3 or 4 of them before I announce it so that I can kind of give myself time, because it's, like I said, there's a lot of those movies, so I don't want to drag it on for like 6 months. But look for it sometime next year. I'll probably make an announcement, or I might just drop it randomly. Friday the 13th, bitches. There it is. The Unknown Time Lord asks, Congrats on 2K. Thank you. My questions are, what are your top 5 metal or rock albums? The Black Album by Metallica is definitely up there. Master of Puppets is up there. As far as Stone Sour, House of Golden Bones, Part 1 and 2. Alter Bridge's Blackbird. And probably Godsmack's Faceless. Those are probably the ones that have influenced me the most in my lifetime. Of course, there's plenty of other awesome ones out there that I'll listen to hundreds of times. Those are just the ones that have kind of hit me in a certain way, both as a musician and a music fan, where like they really influenced me and they really meant a lot to me as I grew up. So those 4 or those 5 probably the best answers. Have you seen any of the Hammer horror movies? I have not seen any of the classic ones. I know that they did a lot of movies until the 70s at some time. There was a lot of like the old, like they were like Frankenstein movies and stuff like that. But they had a revival on it. I checked on Wikipedia as far as their filmography, and it looks like the only movie by Hammer Films that I've seen is Let Me In, the remake to Let the Right One In. Big fan of that one. So yeah, that's the only one I've seen. Who was your first celebrity crush? Oh man, I had a lot. There was no like, there was the one until I grew up, and then there was somebody else. No, I had like 18 girlfriends at one time in my mind. Probably you had Star from The Lost Boys. Is it Phoebe Cates? Is that her name? That's probably not her name. No, that's the chick from, that's the swimming pool chick. So never mind. But yeah, Star from The Lost Boys. Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2. Patricia Arquette from Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. Absolutely. I always thought she was cute in that movie. Then you have, I mean, there was a lot of girls, like the younger girls that were actually closer to my age, like in the Disney movies that I liked, but I can't think of any names. Those are probably the 3 that I kind of always had a crush on. Who was your first celebrity crush? Oh man, I had a lot. I had a lot of women that I was attracted to when I was a kid. Mostly adults, actually, which sounds weird when you're a kid and you fantasize about, 20 and 30-year-olds. Of course, there was girls in like Disney movies and stuff like that that I thought were cute and everything. But as far as like women on screen that I kind of, idolized, I mean, you had like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, Patricia Arquette in Dream Warriors. Always had a crush on her. Probably to a degree the same thing with Nancy, Heather Langenkamp. You had Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, especially after True Lies, definitely had a crush on her. The most obvious answer to this question, I mean, by far the woman that I saw where I was like, that is like female perfection, is Salma Hayek as Santanico Pandemonium in From Dusk Till Dawn. Like that scene, I think I went through puberty immediately when I saw that scene, even though it was in 1996. So yeah, definitely those. Richie Rock Dude, have you thought about doing more music and game reviews? I touched on the music reviews. Yes, I do plan on doing more. Just it's never going to be as many as often as my movie reviews, but I would like to do more. Video game reviews is kind of the same thing as music. I go through spurts with video games. Like I go through a month or so where I'm like video game obsessed. I just want to play games. I'm not really in a movie mood, not really in a music mood. I'm playing games. And then I'll go through like 3 months where I won't even touch a controller. It just kind of like, it's a switch that goes on and off. Sometimes it has to do with games that come out. Like I don't play every single game that comes out. I only play the ones that I really know are going to be good, think are going to be good, or it's an established franchise. So definitely going to do more as more comes out. It's just been kind of stale. Like I'm not going to play Destiny. We're like, it's kind of the same thing. Where movies, I will see a movie I don't think is very good, or I don't think is going to be very good, so that I can come back and review it and tell you why it either was exactly what I thought it was going to be or it actually surprised me. Video games, I don't really have the same drive to do that. I tried it a little bit where like I picked up a few games where I didn't really think they were going to be very good, but it's so much harder to dump 6 to 8 hours into a video game that you're not enjoying so you can give it a good, fair review versus, a possible wasted 90 minutes on a movie that wasn't very good. So I really just I'm very selective about what video games I pay for, what ones I buy, which ones I actually play. So I do plan to do more, but just like music reviews, it's never going to be as frequent as my movie reviews. But looking forward to 1 or 2 more games this year and a lot that are supposed to be coming out next year. So yes, there will be more coming. The Ender Hayden. Hi Cody, congrats 2K. Thank you. My question is, have you ever seen Maniac Cop or any of the sequels? If not, are you interested in seeing them and maybe review them? I have not seen any of them. Am I interested in seeing them? To a degree. I honestly don't know anything about them. I've seen the cover, I know the cover, and that's about it. I haven't really had too many conversations or seen conversations in the horror community about it, so I don't know too much about the movie. But eventually, will I watch them? I'm sure. Will I review them? It depends. If I watch the first one and I don't really care for it, I probably won't watch the other ones. But if I like it enough and I watch some more of them, I might review it. You know, once I get the big franchises out the way, I'm going to need things to review that aren't, you know, Freddy or Jason or Michael or anything like that. So I'm sure I'll be doing a lot more of those kind of deep cut horror reviews probably next year at some point. So possibly I'll review them. Screen Stars asks, congratulations on reaching 2,000 subs. Thank you. My question is, as I am from the UK, I would be interested to know what are your favorite UK-based movies and TV shows. I don't think I've watched any UK-based TV shows, but my favorite movies that are based in the UK is the 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later movies, and at 28 Months Later at some point, whenever the fuck it comes out. But yeah, 28 Days is really good. It's the first kind of like art house indie movie that I actually liked a lot back when I was younger. When it came out, I was kind of snobbish. I only watched like the mainstream shit, but that one was kind of more of a stepping stone into the more independent stuff. And 28 Weeks Later, I think, is one of the most underrated sequels ever. I actually like 28 Weeks Later way more than 28 Days, so big fan of those movies. Aaron at the Movies, have you ever walked out of a movie when at the cinema? If so, what was the movie? I've only walked out of a movie one time in my entire life, and it was not by choice. It was because my parents made me, or my dad made me rather. Basically what happened was, my dad was dating this girl and she had a younger daughter, and they were very squeamish about horror movies and blood and everything like that, so polar opposites from me and my father. And we all went to the movies, and the only things playing at the movies that weekend was Zoolander, which we didn't have any interest in, and this movie called From Hell. It's a little graphic novel based movie starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham, telling this kind of a retelling of the Jack the Ripper story. So we just went into that thinking it was going to be a traditional kind of, you know, period piece thriller. And if you've seen the movie, that you know, at least for the time, it's pretty graphic. It shows, you know, knives cutting and everything like that. So about 15 minutes into the movie, when the first kill happens, from that point until I'll say maybe the 45-minute mark, my dad's girlfriend's daughter was like freaking out and like holding back her vomit and everything, and they went out of the theater and came back and went out of the theater and came back, and I didn't give a fuck. I was sitting there watching the movie like, whatever, that's your problem. And about after the third time, my dad came to the seats on the side. He was just like, gotta go. So we left the movie, and it didn't end up being a very good movie anyway. I actually finished watching it like a year or so after that event. So we didn't miss a whole lot, but that's the only time I've ever left the theater before the movie has been over. I've never been upset enough to leave. And if a movie ever does happen that makes me leave, that tells you right there that it is a serious shit bomb, because I've sat through Seed of Chucky, I've sat through The Bye-Bye Man. If you make me leave, that is the ultimate crime as far as my review goes. Like, I don't even know if I'll have to invent a new rating that goes below fuck this movie if I actually leave the theater. Jeremy Reimer asks, will you ever review Joyride? I'm sure I will. I really like that movie, and yeah, I'm sure I will at some point. I haven't seen any of the sequels, probably won't. I'm not really interested in it, but I really like the first one. And there's an interesting story with that too, about them reshooting like the whole last half hour of the movie, so that's actually one that I'd probably enjoy reviewing. So yeah, keep an eye out for it. Eventually it'll happen. The Dark Knight asks, what are your thoughts of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinity? I've never really been big on the fighting games, any of them really. Mortal Kombat here and there, you know, once in a great while I'll pick it up. The Street Fighter games, never really got into those. Tekken, and Marvel vs. Capcom is no exception to that. I mean, it was much bigger as like an arcade, like standalone arcade game than it was a console game, but I think that what you may be asking for is, because if I remember correctly, this new Marvel vs. Capcom like scales down the Marvel characters like crazy, like gets rid of the X-Men and shit like that. Some kind of a rights issue, which that's a little bit ridiculous, but I don't really have any opinion on it, to be honest with you. It's never been a series that I've been that interested in, so whether it had one Marvel character or 35 of them, I wasn't going to play it anyway. David Catone asks, I heard they remade or made a sequel, whatever, to Flatliners. Need input on that one. Well, the reviews are out now, so my fears are pretty much brought to light, but when I saw that they were making a remake or a sequel, there was a lot of confusion of Flatliners. I was actually for it, because even though I really like the movie, it's a cool little 90s flick, it's not the greatest movie in the world. You could certainly do a remake of that and improve on some things, but The trailers came out. The trailers were horrible. At least the first one. I didn't watch the other ones. First trailer sucked. As soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, this movie's going to be absolute shit. And they were still very wishy-washy. Is this a sequel? Because you have Kiefer Sutherland in the movie, and they made a big deal about he's returning to, come back to this new movie. And they kept making it sound like he was playing the same character. Well, apparently he's not the same character. Apparently this is definitively a remake, not a sequel. So that's a weird little marketing thing there all on its own. But the trailer sucked. And then above all, even though I wasn't going to really rush out to see this in the first place, they didn't allow any advanced screenings, no advanced reviews. And to take it a step further, they canceled all of the Thursday night showings. I do not remember the last time a new movie has come out and not had a Thursday night showing. Like, there is nothing else you could possibly do as a movie studio to send out a signal flare for everybody to see that says, our movie's a piece of shit. So I expected nothing from that movie. And the reviews, I think the last time I checked, there was 32 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's still sitting at a 0%. So no surprise to me, but apparently the movie sucks ass, so just watch the original. Jackal Gold King asks, what's your opinion on the Death Wish movies? I've never seen any of them, actually. The old Charlie Bronson series. I know Death Sentence, the movie I'll be talking about a little bit later, is kind of like a pseudo sequel to that, kind of. At least the book was. The movie has nothing to do with Death Wish, but I've never seen them. I know they got the remake coming out with Bruce Willis, and I'll probably see that just because I want Bruce Willis to do something that I'm going to enjoy again. And it looks like, it doesn't look like it's going to be a great rendition of that movie, but just as a Bruce Willis action thriller kind of movie, it looks like it might be interesting. And I'm curious what Eli Roth is going to do in that genre, because this is not his usual thing. So I haven't seen any of them. Any actor you could think of that fell off, like used to be great but now does lackluster bad movies? Well, speaking of Bruce Willis, speaking of Death Wish, Bruce Willis was one of the greatest actors around. Like, his movies were just kick-ass for the most part. Everything that he did you knew was going to be pretty good. And the last 6 years, maybe even more, he's done either really phoned-in performances in major movies, or he's done red box bullshit movies. With, Looper being the one movie that he actually put some effort into and was really good. So he just does nothing anymore. So I don't know. The last Die Hard sequel pissed me off that he just, not only did he phone it in, but he allowed the filmmakers to phone it in. That really bugged me, because not only is it my favorite movie, but that's his franchise. Like, Bruce Willis can call the shots on that movie to a degree, and he just let them make this horrid piece of shit. So that aggravated me and kind of brought down my respect for him a little bit. He's made a lot of kind of shitty comments about, some of the movies that he just doesn't want to do anymore, almost like all the movies that we love him for aren't really that great or something. He's kind of off a little bit to me, but we'll see. Maybe this Death Wish movie will be good. Maybe when they finally do another Die Hard movie, as long as it's not this Die Hard Year One shit that they're trying to push, he might come back into the forefront again, but he's definitely the biggest example. There's plenty of other actors. I mean, like Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage used to do a lot of really good movies. Now he's kind of a joke. Eddie Murphy, he's probably, if you looked up, has been, as far as acting in the dictionary, he's definitely on the fucking page, because his movie, he was like the king of the 80s and even the 90s to a degree, and then he just did years, like 15, 20 years of bullshit. Aside from like Nutty Professor, everything that he did was just garbage. Now, he did a movie called Mr. Church last year, which I really liked. He is really good. It's a very hokey, sappy kind of, feel-good, chick flick kind of movie, but it's still a really enjoyable movie. It's got a good story, and he is really good in it. So I would love to see him carry on that trend and hopefully come back, but he's definitely he's probably the biggest answer, the best answer to that question is Eddie Murphy. Any actors you want to see a comeback? I'm leading into answering all your questions at once. Any actors that I want to see make a comeback? Yes, Eddie Murphy, like I just got done saying. I want to see him come back, either do comedies or do stand-up, or continue this Mr. Church thing where he actually shows a serious side to his acting, because he's got it. He's got some chops. So he's a good one. I'd like to see Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of come back and be at least a really good action star. He's never going to be on top like he was in the 90s, but pretty much everything he's tried to do since he's come back to acting after being governor has not been received very well. Pretty much every movie that he does is either not very good or is really divisive. I liked the movie Escape Plan with him and Sylvester Stallone, and I liked elements of the Expendables franchise, most of the first movie, but he hasn't really had any big comeback movie yet. So I'd be curious to see him do that. I'd like to see Robert Englund make a comeback. Maybe come back and play Freddy at least one more time, do a Freddy versus Jason 2, and then retire. But yeah, any of those. Maurice the Beast Vlogs. Leach Army. Movie question. Would a modern Faces of Death remake with a theatrical release be successful? No. Should it be legit or staged scenes? Well, I've never seen any of the Faces of Death or any movies like that. From what I understand, they're basically just collections of people getting murdered and people like committing suicide and shit like that. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, correct me. But that's what I've kind of been told those movies are, is like real life footage of people dying. I don't think people are interested in seeing that. I think there's a reason why it doesn't really get brought up in conversation very much. Would it be successful? I don't even know if it would get a theatrical release for one, but would it be successful? I don't think so. I don't think people would be interested in that. And should it be legit or staged scenes? I don't know if there are staged scenes or if they're all legit or if they're all staged in Faces of Death, but I would say staged. I wouldn't want to see footage of actual people dying, but that's just me. Music. What were your best and worst concert experiences? Well, I've never had like a horrible concert experience, but I'd say probably the worst concert experience as far as not loving the entire show was me and my girlfriend Holly. Whenever we first got together, my birthday, the year that we met, she got me tickets to Papa Roach and Seether, and we drove to Atlanta and went and saw it. And it's this little venue in Atlanta called the Tabernacle. I've seen a handful of shows there. It's one of my favorite venues that I've ever been to because it's very small. It's a small little club bar-like setting. There's a wooden floor, a little pit area, and it's just a very cool, intimate setting for a rock show. Because even if you stand all the way in the back, you're closer than 90% of the concerts that you'll go to with assigned seating. So very cool. But the only problem with that is that if you see certain bands and you plan on standing down there, people love to mosh. People love to shove shoulders and throw elbows, and I'm sorry, I've been a metalhead my entire life, but I cannot fucking stand that when I'm trying to watch a concert. The two biggest pet peeves in concert, one of them is moshing, the other one is everybody holding their fucking phones up and recording the entire goddamn show while you're trying to watch it, and all you see, like, this is me standing behind somebody's phone, like, I want to knock people the fuck out when they do that. Take your picture, take a little 15-second clip, and get the fuck out of the way. We're here for the experience. Unplug a little bit, bitch. Rant over. I could do a whole video on that. But going back to your question, worst concert experience. When we were there, the opening bands were pretty good. Seether was awesome. There was a little bit of moshing in Seether, but very tolerable. And we paid for VIP to go into the venue early, so we were only like 3 rows of people back from the stage. And we were there the whole concert. I was excited. We're close. I could reach out and touch somebody on these bands. I could catch a drumstick. Then Papa Roach comes out. And not only does the crowd get way more wild with Papa Roach, but the singer, Jacob E. Shaddix, actually encourages moshing during certain songs. And man, I'm talking about, not only is it hard because I'm there with my girlfriend and I don't want her getting shoved and knocked around, so I'm trying to protect her and like face off with people at the same time, but I'm totally getting my experience fucked with because I'm not paying attention to the music. I'm just paying attention to everybody around me trying to guard me and her. And eventually it got so bad that not only did one of my posters that I had that I was holding get bent, but we basically had to move all the way to the back. So we paid for VIP to stand in the back. So that really pissed me off. But it was still a really good experience. It was still a really good concert. So that's the worst experience that I've had. As far as best, probably the first concert that I've ever been to, because aside from that one experience with the moshing, every other concert I've ever been to has been awesome. I haven't had anything really bad happen on any of them to make them like, this one stacks better here. So my first concert was Alice Cooper in 2000 on his Brutal Planet tour. And just the fact of, finally having the experience of seeing a musical artist that I love in real life playing music with a bunch of big crowd, like that's an experience I'll never forget. So I'll say that's my best, but I've had tons of great concert experiences. Sega or Nintendo old school consoles? Sega, because I didn't really have Nintendo or Super Nintendo, even though there's games on those consoles that I loved because my cousin had those consoles, so we'd play them at his house, and we'd come over to my house and play Sega Genesis. and I had tons of Sega Genesis games. I had like 40 games before we sold it. But I mean, like the old school Sonic games, some of the old movie games, like, you know, you got like Toy Story and Lion King and Aladdin, but then you got like Terminator 2 and games like that. Like, I loved that old school Sega Genesis games. I could go today and still pick up an old school Genesis game and pop one of those cartridges in and just play it like I never missed a beat. So I'm a Sega guy. George Hernandez asks, I have two questions. The first being, what was your first horror movie that you saw in theaters? It was From Dusk Till Dawn. That's the first one that I can remember anyways. I remember it because my dad didn't realize how graphic it was going to be, so as soon as the word pussy started getting thrown around 100 times by Cheech Marin, and we get into this strip club and there's titties flying everywhere, like, my dad was like, like covering my ears and covering my eyes, like, don't look, don't look. So I remember just fighting, like, stop, I want to see. So that's probably I think that's the first one I saw in theaters. There may have been another one. Second question, the second being, where did you get that Punisher shirt? Well, I got a few of them, but I got all of them from a website called Ripped Apparel, RIPT. Basically, they are a t-shirt company that has like artist designed t-shirts. They release 3 a day. And you only have 24 hours to buy it. Well, actually, that's a lie. It used to be that way. Now you basically have 48 hours to buy it. But the first day, they're only $11. The second day, they're like 18. So I still consider it just the first day. But you go on there, every single day, they have 3 new designs. And usually they all kind of coincide with each other. Not always, but usually they do. If there's a Punisher shirt one day, then there's 3 different types of Punisher shirts. But pretty much, I'd say 95% of my t-shirts I get from there because they're so unique and so cool. And they're really cheap and affordable. So that's actually a really good website. I tried to do an affiliate with them, but their website's kind of wonky with all of that, and they didn't want to sponsor me, so fuck you, Ripped Apparel. But no, seriously, they're a really good t-shirt brand company, so pop that into your favorites, and I check them. You can do on Instagram, that's the best way. Follow them on Instagram, and every day I'll look at their Instagram, and it'll show the 3 new designs, and I'd say at least twice a month I'll order a t-shirt from them, so check them out. Sean Chandler asks, which horror subgenre needs to make a comeback? Old school slashers, man. Old school slashers needs to make a comeback. I've got my fingers and my toes crossed that this new Halloween movie is going to kick ass financially and critically and with the fans. And then we'll see a surge of, you know, not remakes, but just good old school slasher movies start to come out. Now, you do see the occasional slasher, but they're done like found footage and like, they're like half slashers. They're mixed in with other genres and everything. So I just want to see some old school slashers come back. And like I said, hopefully Halloween can bring it back. Which horror subgenre would you be happy if it died and stayed dead? I got 2 of them. First one I've already kind of mentioned was found footage. There's maybe 3 found footage movies that I can think of that I honestly enjoy. The rest of the 2,000 of them that they've shoved down our throats the past like 7 or 8 years, just go away. Go away. Blair Witch Project utilized that to its most genius application as far as their marketing. Nobody's going to recreate that. Yes, the Paranormal Activities were popular with some people. I'm not one of them. And then you get the occasional January and February movie where they throw found footage in there and just, I want it to go away. I'm sick of found footage. It's a cheap way to make movies. It's a cheap way to do storytelling. And 95% of them I don't like at all or borderline hate them. So fuck off, found footage. The other one's torture porn. Now, I was somewhat into that genre whenever that first came out, like the Hostels and the Saws and everything, where it was basically just 90 minutes of people getting brutalized. And it's gonna sound weird coming from somebody that wants slashers back, but I don't really like those types of movies anymore. I don't really I can't watch the Hostel movies anymore. I mean, I can, but I don't get any enjoyment out of them. The Saw movies I've never been big fans of. I don't get any enjoyment in a movie that doesn't really have something else to say aside from, look how disgusting this is. Look how gross it is watching this guy get his face torn out and his eyeball ripped out and his freaking lungs pulled out. Look how gross that is. I don't get any enjoyment from that. Maybe I'm getting older. Maybe it's the fact that I have kids, but just stuff like that to me, I just don't feel the need to watch it. So I could be just fine if we never see another Hostel or anything like that. Or if they do another Saw movie, which they do have one coming out in October, they put more story into it and less just splat. Look at that. Look how gross it is. So I can do with either of those going away forever. Low Carb Monster asks, congrats Cody on the 2K, bro. Thanks, man. If you could choose any horror movie to get a remake, reboot, what would it be? Well, my answer to that previous to this year was It. I've wanted a It remake or a re-adaptation. People don't like the word reboot or remake when I talk about It, but whatever. It's a remake to me. But It would have been my answer for the longest time, but now we have that. So 2 other movies I think that it could be really good to be remade because I like the original movies, but they could definitely use an update, is a movie that's probably never going to get a remake, honestly. Trick or Treat. It's an old metal horror movie about a kid who plays his records backwards and he could hear his favorite artists from beyond the dead. They could do something cool with that if they wanted to bring that back. The other one is supposedly getting a remake at some point. There's rumblings that people are going ahead and they're getting things together for it. They're writing a script, they're attaching people to it. That's Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead's a really cool, old school monster movie, and I think that a big update in technology could really help that movie out. And supposedly, let's see if they stick to this, the people who are in charge of the remake as it stands now are saying that they want to keep everything practical like the old movie. They don't want to have CGI Pumpkinhead. And if that's the direction they're going, thank you. There should be more filmmakers like you, because I don't like CGI where it's not needed. So Pumpkinhead or Trick or Treat. Nostalgia Fan asks, congrats, man. That was fast from your last goal. You're getting up there. Yes, it's getting much faster than I thought it was going to be. If there's another movie that you like that needs a remake, which one would it be? Oh, so kind of the same question. Any bad movie that deserves a good remake? Well, that's kind of different then. Okay, so a movie that sucked that they need to remake to make it better. Or at least sucked in my opinion. One that is in very close memory because they totally shit the bed on it was The Girl on the Train that came out last year. Horrible adaptation of that book. I read that book and it's one of the best books I've ever read. Very tense, very intense book, and a very good mystery, a lot of great characters. Nothing good about that book transferred over to that movie. That movie was garbage. So they could redo that movie. They're not gonna be able to do it for a long time. They might never do it, but there's elements of that book you could make a great, tense, Gone Girl level movie with. They just didn't do it the first time. As far as another movie that people might not like that I say this, because this movie does have a pretty good amount of fandom, but there's a movie that I've never been a fan of. I rewatched it recently, and I'll just say it right now, I don't like the movie at all. I don't understand what everyone loves about it. Like, I know all movies are subjective and everything, so I'm not saying that you shouldn't like it, but I don't like it. I've seen it previously, never quite got it as a kid, seen it as a teenager, never quite got it, and I saw it a couple of months ago and didn't get it again, and that's The People Under the Stairs. It's a Wes Craven movie. It's kind of like a hood horror movie, because there's a lot of kind of blaxploitation elements in there and a lot of kind of hood movie humor and everything. So it's one of those like mishmash of genres, but basically there's these landlords in this very poor, rundown neighborhood. They find out that the landlords are like psychopaths and there's actually like cannibalistic children living underneath their house and everything. So the concepts of that movie, I think you could do better. Now, I know people say don't remake a Wes Craven movie, but Wes Craven has made some bad movies. I know that it's sacrilege to say that for horror fans, but he has. And in my opinion, The People Under the Stairs is one of them. So I would be up for a People Under the Stairs remake, because maybe somebody else's take on that storyline will actually make me a fan of their movie, but never been a fan of the original. Kelly Marie Farrell asks, fuck, marry, kill, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, or Catwoman? All right. Wow. I'll marry Wonder Woman because she seems like she would be the best wife. She's the only one who's not a villain. I'd probably fuck Harley Quinn, and I'd probably kill Catwoman, because I couldn't trust Catwoman in a relationship because she'd probably steal all my shit, and Harley Quinn just seems like she'd be a freak. So there's my answer. Holly, I'm sorry if you're watching this video. Keith Vane, what do you do for a living? Always wondered what YouTubers do. I'm in soil testing, actually. I'm in construction, and basically what I do is I'm like the first round of construction. If there's a plot of land that somebody decides I want to put a building there, we'll go out. We have drill rigs that are truck mounted. We'll go out, we'll do 30-foot holes, 40-foot hole. I mean, however big the building's going to be depends on the size, but we take soil samples at every 5 feet all the way down to whatever depth until we hit soil that is load bearing. So we'll take it back to the lab, and we'll bring the actual physical soil samples. We have numbers that we hit this big ass hammer into the ground that actually punches into the soil, and however many blows it takes to get 1.5 feet. We write that down. That tells you how tough the soil is and the compaction and everything. So we do all of that before anybody touches the site, bring it back, and then with the information that we provide, then we tell whoever's going to be building the building what they need to do as far as making footings and how big they need to be, or if the building needs to be on piles, or if you understand anything what I'm talking about. We're the first round of construction, and I dig dirt out of the ground. We'll put it that way for the layman. So that's what I do. Texas 82 Abel. Oh, he's got a few questions. Okay. Number 1, what are your top 10 favorite horror movies? It's hard to do a definitive top 10 right off the top of my head, but I'll just kind of name some. Of course, Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, Child's Play 2, Bride of Chucky, Halloween, The Thing, Fright Night, The Lost Boys, Session 9, controversial pick, Jeepers Creepers. I love the first one. Phantasm, Phantasm 2. I mean, I got a lot of them. So not necessarily, and don't take that as my definitive top 10, but that's definitely 10 of my favorite horror movies of all time. What's your favorite food to eat? Hot food that doesn't have onions in it. Yeah, I love to eat. I love to cook. So I mean, I'm big in cooking. I love experimenting with different things. So I can eat pretty much everything as long as it's not got certain things in it. Like I don't like onions. I'm not a big mushroom guy, stuff like that. But as far as my favorite food in the world, I mean, like I love Mexican food. I love Italian food. Barbecue is great, especially if you live in the South. You know where to go. But like if one specific food item that I crave, and that if I know that a restaurant has it and I go there and I see it on the menu, I will try that above anything else, is just very basic. It's just a spicy chicken sandwich. Whether it's fried or grilled or baked or whatever the hell it is, if it's a buffalo sandwich or if it's just spices put into the meat, which is my preferred way, like even fast food restaurants. If they got a spicy chicken sandwich, 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm ordering. So that's probably my favorite food in the world, is just a basic spicy chicken sandwich. 3, what are your top 5 favorite flavors of ice cream? Well, we'll get vanilla out the way because I do love vanilla. Chocolate, cookies and cream. I like birthday cake. And it depends on the brand because sometimes they put way too much of certain items of this mix, but I do like Moose Tracks too. Sometimes they put way too many peanut butter cups in there, and peanut butter cups are kind of hard to eat when you're eating frozen food. But some brands do mix that stuff very well. So that's probably my top 5 favorite right there. Number 4, they say that Plan 9 from Outer Space is the worst movie ever made, but what do you think is the worst movie of all time? Well, I'm sure I have not seen the worst movie of all time, but I can't imagine it being much worse than this film. One of my Patreon supporters is also a fellow patron supporter of Durban from Durbania, and we just recently did a review on his channel as kind of a collaborative patron request on a movie called The Apple. It's a movie from the 80s. It's a like disco, biblical, Christian, rock and roll opera thing, and it is horrible. I mean, it's painful to watch. The movie it's fascinating how something that bad can exist. And that was the pretext of this guy, Ted Harrington, asking us to watch this movie, is because he thought it was so bad. He wanted to see us just kind of have a roundtable discussion of how horrible it was. So, I mean, check out that video. It's over at Durbania. If I remember, I'll put a link to it or a card somewhere for it. But that movie is god-awful. That's the worst movie I've ever seen, definitively. Like, I hate on Freddy's Dead. Every day of my life, anytime anybody brings that thing up, I will tell you how horrible that piece of shit is. But The Apple's worse. So, The Apple's one of those movies that's so bad that it makes you reflect on all the movies you said were bad before in your life, and suddenly they look a little bit better. Last question is, what are your top 10 favorite action films? Well, same kind of disclaimer. These aren't necessarily like definitively my top 10, but Die Hard, of course. Terminator 2 is definitely number 2. Like those two are definitive number 1 and 2. Lethal Weapon 2, Aliens, Predator, Death Sentence is actually a pretty underrated action movie, action thriller. Casino Royale, First Blood, Fast 5, Point Break, the John Wick movies, those are all awesome. MN316, what was the first horror movie that you remember seeing in the theater? Well, I answered that question. From Dusk Till Dawn was the first one that I remember going to the theaters to see. As far as a second one, I don't remember. I remember seeing Bride of Chucky in theaters. And that may be I remember seeing a lot of horror movies in theaters for some reason. Do you think I would remember that more? I remember seeing action movies and shit in theaters when I was a kid. Devin Smith, if you could make a Freddy versus Jason 2, if you could make a Freddy versus Jason 2 and you had to have a clear winner, who would you have win and why? Well, even though, practically speaking, there is no reason in the free fucking world why Freddy would be able to beat Jason, since I'm a Freddy fan, I would make Freddy win. I wouldn't do the cop-out ending that they did in the film that we actually have where they both win. They walk away, it's a draw. Fuck that. Freddy won, bitch. Where would you have the fight happen? I mean, you can't have it anywhere except for Elm Street and Camp Crystal Lake. So I think, at least in my opinion, you can't, unless you're going to bring a third character in. So it would be probably just like they did in the film we actually got, or the first movie, it would be one of those two or both, preferably both. Okay, if you had to pit Michael Myers against someone, who would it be? It'd have to be Freddy. It'd have to be a Freddy versus Michael Myers. Because like I know the popular thing is to say, well, Michael Myers should fight Jason because they're both masked and they're both, you know, the most similar of the slashers. But filmmaking-wise, practically speaking, that would be a boring fucking movie to watch because neither one of them talk. So it would literally be minutes on end of nobody saying anything and they're just slashing at each other. There's no getting around that. So I think that Michael Myers would be awesome as an addition, like Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers. And you could see a fight scene between Jason and Michael Myers and it would work with Freddy kind of being around or something like that. But I don't think it would work as a whole movie to have those two with each other with no Freddy or no Chucky or somebody with some personality around. So if I was making a movie and I had to pick, I would make Freddy fight Michael Myers because you have to have somebody that talks, somebody with some personality to break up the monotony of the strong silent types that are Jason and Michael Myers. Where was I at? That was your last question. Okay. Blue Water asks, what was your favorite movie from the Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw, and the Chucky series? I'm going to do a ranking for the Chucky, so I'm not going to say definitively. I will say that it's either going to be Child's Play 2 or Bride of Chucky. I know Bride of Chucky is not a popular answer for favorite of the series, but I love the hell out of that movie. So I did a ranking with Adam over at Almost Sideways, and I said that Bride of Chucky was my number one, but I'm not sure. Because now that I've actually watched this series again, and I'm diving into it and reviewing them all, by the time I rewatch Bride of Chucky and do that review, I may kind of, reassess my thing and be like, you know what? Yeah, Bride of Chucky's my favorite, but Child's Play 2 is it's hard to beat, man. I watched it again, and even when I did my review for Child's Play 2, I watched the movie twice. I watched it once, then I did my review, and while I was editing the movie, the review, I watched the movie again. So it's either going to be one of those two. Texas Chainsaw, it's going to be between the remake and the original. The remake is so good. That's the one, that's probably the best horror movie remake, aside from the obvious answer of The Thing. And Evil Dead's great too, but the Texas Chainsaw remake is the scariest movie that I've seen in theaters, which is a story I'll get into in my review. But it's going to be one of those two. So again, sorry I'm not giving you a definitive answer, but this is answers that I want to do in a whole video. So Friday the 13th, again, from my memory, 2, 4, and 6 have always been kind of my favorites. 2, 4, and 6. So it's one of those three. I think that's kind of the popular answer too. Santino Buckaroo says, I am a huge Argento fan, so I'm very curious to what are your thoughts on the Giallo films, and do you have a favorite movie from that genre? Have you seen any Giallo films? I have not. And my buddy Anthony Arviso is probably cussing me out right now from whatever screen he's watching this video, but yeah, I've not seen any of the Argento movies. I've seen most of Suspiria, but I fell asleep. It was late at night, and unless I was searching the wrong thing, it got taken off of Amazon Instant Video, so I've not had a chance to watch that thing all the way through. I know that's the one that everybody recommends the most, but yeah, I haven't seen any of his other films, so sorry I can't answer your question a little bit better. James Womack asks, congrats bro, thank you. Just want to know your top 10 movies so far of 2017. Logan's still number one for me. Logan's still number one by quite a big margin. I have a hard time believing any movie's going to beat Logan this year. Baby Driver was a huge surprise. That's probably my second favorite movie of the year. War for the Planet of the Apes. John Wick Chapter 2. It is up there. The Big Sick, which I just watched, that's definitely in my top 10. Great romantic comedy. Wonder Woman, Wind River, Lego Batman, and The Devil's Candy. That's probably going to be my top 10 so far this year. But yeah, like I said, definitely Logan and Baby Driver are my top 2. And Logan is like, there's Logan and then there's Baby Driver and everything else. Mike Rock movie reviews. Congrats on 2,000 subs, Cody. Thank you. Got a couple of questions for you. What's a horror movie that you hated that other people loved? The Blair Witch Project. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Like I said, I don't like found footage movies, so that's 90% of it. That movie is so fucking boring. I tried rewatching it not too long ago before I saw the new Blair Witch before it came out, so that I kind of be fresh going into the new one. And I didn't even like the new one very much, but the old one is just, it's so boring. It's people walking around in the woods hearing shit. And until like the last 5 minutes of the movie, nothing happens. So I don't understand the fandom of that movie at all. I'm not saying that you guys are wrong if you love it, but I don't get it. So I'm sure there's more, but that's the best answer I can, that's the best answer that I can think of. Where was I at, damn it? Oh, also, what's your favorite movie that deals with an exorcism? That's another genre that I'm not big on. I'm not big on exorcism movies, and they shove those down your throat just about every year too. But probably, I need to rewatch the original The Exorcist. I have not seen it since I was a kid, so that may very well be on this list if I watched it recently. So don't cuss me out because I didn't include The Exorcist. I just don't remember much about it. But as of right now, I would say the first Conjuring, and even though this is going to contradict what I said about found footage movies, I did say that there's about 3 of them that I did enjoy. I actually like that movie, The Last Exorcism. I think it's a really good movie. I think that it's underrated. I think it's creepy. I think the guy who plays the lead in that movie is actually really good. It's just a really cool movie that, to me, succeeds in everything it's trying to do. So check out The Last Exorcism if you haven't seen it. That's actually a pretty good one. Taz Shadewind asks, what's your favorite color? Well, even though technically this is not a color, my favorite color is black. Yeah, black t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. I'm all about that. Question 2, favorite Netflix or TV show? Well, as far as like shows of all time, my favorite show of all time by a landslide is Breaking Bad. Like, I'm a Breaking Bad fanatic. Everything about that show I think is brilliant. That is definitely a review series to keep an eye out for. Probably after I get done with like Halloween and all that kind of stuff, I'll probably start doing a Breaking Bad review series because I want to talk about that show. As far as shows that are still going, it's going to be between, even though I haven't watched it in a few years, I've gotten really behind on it, Supernatural, love Supernatural, and a show that I am caught up with is Shameless, the American version on Showtime. That's a great, hilarious, wild show. So those 3. Question 3, what do you think Leatherface smells like? Probably smells like shit. It smells like sweat and blood. That's probably exactly what he smells like. Be wise. Congrats on 2,000. Thank you. What was the worst theatrical experience you've ever had? Seed of Chucky. I'll get into this in my Seed of Chucky review, but I've said it before in some other videos. Basically, when I went to go see Seed of Chucky, aside from how disappointing the actual movie was, the movie's horrible, but it came out around the same time, maybe a couple of weeks after Grand Theft Auto San Andreas came out, and it was a game where I was really looking forward to buying it, and it was one of those games I had to wait for because I didn't have my own job at the time. I was still young, and it was one of those things where I had to just beg my parents enough until they finally decided to buy it. Well, that was the night where my dad's like, all right, we'll buy you the game, and we'll go see Seed of Chucky. And we went there, and Best Buy was fucking sold out. So that was disappointment number 1. Then I get to the movie theater and Seed of Chucky starts and disappointment number 2 starts. Almost immediately I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? What is this movie? And as the movie progresses, and this tells you how dedicated I am that I didn't walk out of this thing, the movie gets worse and my health started like deteriorating out of nowhere. My fucking nose started getting like burning sensations in the back of my throat, and I was coughing and I was sweating, I was feeling feverish, and I stuck it out thinking maybe that movie would get better. I didn't want to give up on Chucky, but man, it was bad. So getting fucked over out of my game, seeing a horrible movie that I looked forward to for years, and then walking away completely sick. And it was raining like a son of a bitch out here in Savannah, so it was even like dark and scary like driving home because I was like half out of it and all you see is rain everywhere. That was the worst theater experience of my life. What's the most underrated action movie? Probably Death Sentence. I mentioned it earlier. It's kind of an action thriller kind of thing, but with Kevin Bacon. It's directed by James Wan. It's the one movie by James Wan that nobody talks about. And it's kind of like Death Wish, basically. His kid gets killed, the killer gets off, he goes, Kevin Bacon, and starts unleashing fucking havoc on this gang that killed his kid. Kick-ass movie. Find a copy of Death Sentence and watch it. You will thank me. What is the worst movie considered a classic? I wouldn't consider these movies bad, but they're movies that are considered classics that I just don't get why they're classics. I don't get the appeal for them. I don't get the fandom for them. One of them's Blade Runner, and the other one's Animal House. I did not laugh a single moment through Animal House. I think just the style of humor in that movie is so dated to the point where when I finally saw it, it just was gone for me. It just did not mesh with me at all. And Blade Runner, I mean, I understand the genius aspects of some of the technology and the world building, but I just don't get that movie. I just don't get the fandom for it. To me, that's a movie that should be like the definitive cult classic, like people that love it and there's people that don't like it, but it seems to be a movie that everybody says is genius. Everybody says is like this huge work of art. You very rarely find somebody that does not like Blade Runner, but I'm one of them. And anything by Mel Brooks. Yeah, I'm not a Mel Brooks fan. What is the best movie considered a classic? I'd say Back to the Future and Goodfellas. Those are the two that are in my top 10 of all time that are considered classics. So Back to the Future and Goodfellas. Ryan Woods asks, fuck, marry, kill. Why are you guys so interested in who I'm fucking? Fuck, marry, kill. Michael Myers, Leatherface, and Jason. Damn. Well, you're gay anyway you answer that question. So, all right. Fuck, marry, kill, Michael Myers, Leatherface, and Jason. Probably marry Michael Myers because he's the only one who's not like, he's a human. I don't know. Fuck Leatherface and kill Jason because then I get the power of saying I killed Jason on the one motherfucker that could do it. And again, it's, you know, you're sticking your dick in Leatherface or you're sticking your dick in a deteriorating zombie. So you lose no matter what that is. And apparently I'm the bitch in the relationship because all three of those guys would definitely tell me what to do if I was in a relationship with them. So that, damn you for that question. But hopefully that was an entertaining answer. So we'll say that. Langley Productions. Whoa, you went to 2K fast. Congrats, man. Yes, I did because my subscribers are awesome. Thank you. Are there any video games coming out that you're interested in seeing? The only video game that I can think of that I'm dying to play is The Last of Us 2. I love The Last of Us. That's in my top 3 video games of all time. I love it. Cannot wait for the sequel. I can't think of anything else that's coming out. Plush Guy asks, are you ever going to review the Saw series? I'm sure eventually. Like when I get this series that I'm real passionate out of the way, then I start looking at what else is out there. I'm sure Saw will come down the pipe at some point. I'm not a big Saw fan. But it'll definitely happen. Rad Movie Guy asks, most underrated horror movie. Session 9. Session 9 is in my top 5 horror movies of all time because of how scary that damn movie is. Like the atmosphere, the tone of that movie, like it's all about atmosphere and tone in that movie. There's no guy chasing you with a saw. There's no, demons coming after you. There's no Satan around. It's just atmosphere and tone in that movie. I'm not gonna tell you anything about the story, just maybe look at a trailer or something like that, but if it's out there, it is out on Blu-ray, but if it's out there on like VOD somewhere, guys, just like I said with Death Sentence, check out Session 9, you will thank me. And nobody talks about it. Also, could you do a Pitch Wars video for a new horror movie based off a pre-existing slasher? Would love to hear yours and others' thoughts on how to reinvent an older slasher. That idea has actually already kind of presented itself. I don't have anything in the works for a new Pitch Wars video. Unfortunately, they're just not really that successful. The first one I did 200 something views. The second one that I did like, it's got like 150 views right now. So compared to a movie review where I get up in, 1,000 or something like that within a couple of weeks, it's hard to justify the amount of time and the amount of collaboration and editing and everything that goes into them. But I'm not giving up on it quite yet, but it's not necessarily gonna be the monthly show that I wanted it to be. So probably maybe sometime in October or sometime after October, I'll reinvent it and I'll bring it back and have somebody come in. But that is an idea that I do want to explore, like pitch a Friday the 13th, pitch a Halloween movie. Yes, I've had those discussions, so it will happen eventually. Jason Hamilton, got a couple questions. Congrats, bro. Thank you. I got 3 questions for you. Number 1, who is one person you haven't met in horror movie industry that you'd sell your soul to meet? Well, literally probably none of them, but just for the sake of the question, I'd love to meet Robert Englund and John Carpenter. Those are probably the two that come to mind immediately. What do you think about some people thinking that Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning is Oscar worthy? So, in the Facebook group that we're a part of, Killer Flicks, if the guy that made this post is watching the video, this is not making fun of you. I'm just giving the context of the question. A guy in the group posted something that basically said, I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning is Oscar worthy, mic drop. And I was one of the first person to respond to it, but me and Jason were part of that discussion. So, I'll say what I said to the guy whenever he made the original post. Like, look, I appreciate anybody's passion and fandom for certain movies. And yes, like my top 10, top 20, top 30 movies, so passionate about. I will talk about them all the time. I'll defend them to people that hate them. I will sing their praises to people that haven't seen them. But things that movie fans need to understand is there is a huge difference, and there needs to be this divide between, man, that movie is good, to, man, that movie is Oscar worthy. You hear that conversation a lot. Like, have you seen Tom Cruise in American Made? He's Oscar worthy. Have you seen Keanu Reeves' performance in John Wick with the action and the gun kata and everything? His performance is Oscar worthy. No. The Oscars, like, and look, I don't really give a fuck about movies that are Oscar worthy. Most of the time, whenever you see movies that make it to the Oscars, I've seen maybe 3 of them and I like one of them. They're just not my cup of tea. So I don't consider saying a movie is not Oscar worthy a knock on the movie whatsoever. But let's talk about objectively. Oscar worthy, Oscar winning, Oscar nominated. You're talking about the top 0.05% of movies that come out that entire year. Hundreds of movies come out in a year, and you got to pick maybe 5 or 6 that are directed the best, told the best story, was written the best, had the best acting, the best cinematography, the best costume design, and what was the best overall movie. No. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, and this is what I said in my comment, doesn't even deserve to have its name whispered at the Oscars. And admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of the beginning. I need to rewatch it before I do my review, but I never really thought it was that great of a movie in the first place. But even if it was, even if we're talking about the Texas Chainsaw remake, which I love, no, it doesn't even deserve to park at the Oscars. It's not even anywhere close to that. You're talking about movies like Schindler's List and Ben-Hur and all this kind of stuff. No, Leatherface is not in that conversation, so no. No. Could you give a shout out to my girlfriend's little 3-year-old son? He's a nonverbal autistic child whom I fell completely in love with, and like he was my own, and it would be such a blessing to get him to watch this and hear his name, just to see a smile light up his face. His name is Jaden. Of course I can. Jaden, this is for you, man. This video is for you. This is your time to shine. You are awesome. You are awesome, Jaden. You're the man. And kudos to you, Jason, for standing up for whoever obviously did not stand up for that kid and be his father. At least maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe the dad is actually around, but you're just saying you fell in love with him. But actually, 2 of my kids are not biologically my own, so I'm right there with you. Gotta love kids, and gotta love guys like us that stand up and love kids that are not our own, because that is not you know, kissing my own ass, but that's love on a new level. So, congrats to you, my friend. Derek Watson, are you more of a DC fan or Marvel? I'm more of a fan of DC Comics. I'm more of a fan of DC characters, but I think Marvel definitely has the better movies, at least so far. If you are a DC fan, you should do a The Flash TV show watch and review. I'm really not a fan of doing like the reaction, the watch and review kind of things, and I'll explain why. I do like the show The Flash. I didn't watch all of season 3, so I need to get caught up, but as far as being interested in just a straight up review, possibly, but it's not a show. There's so many of those that I don't know if I would want to do it every single week. But as far as like a reaction, watch, and review, I'm not really a fan of doing that. I don't even like doing trailer reactions anymore, because it just, to me, it's not, there's no creativity there, you know what I mean? It's just you watching somebody else's work and going, ooh, oh, oh, oh man. And you put that out there, you get fucking 400,000 views because people love watching it, and then your subscriber base grows off of trailer reactions like mine did in the beginning, and then it's basically empty subs. Like, for the longest time, I thought trailer reactions were the key to success, and I would do a trailer reaction for anything that dropped. My top video right now is a trailer reaction. Up until recently, my top 15 videos were trailer reactions. And after a while, it bugged me, because basically I have all these people that are watching my videos and subscribing to my channel just to see me react, but they're not interested in hearing what I want to say. or what I have to say on certain movies. Some of them did. Some of them did. But for the most part, when you get subs and views off of reactions, they become empty subs, because as you go on, you realize that you have 30,000 subscribers, but your videos that aren't reactions have like 150 views. So that's why I've kind of gotten away from that. I've definitely focused on reviews and videos where I'm talking and giving my opinion and actually being creative and putting my thoughts out there, and getting away from just reacting to stuff. And my views and my videos have reflected that. Now that I'm doing very focused stuff, I'm not doing reactions, I'm just doing everything that you see on my channel now is either reviews or Blu-ray updates or something like that, and it all kind of flows together. It's all very focused. Now my reviews get 500, 600, 700 views, 2,000 views, 300 views, or 3,000 views, versus before my trailer reactions would skyrocket. My reviews would get 150 reviews if I was lucky. So that's a little bit of insight into how YouTube works, the strange interworkings of YouTube. But thank you for the recommendation, though. I might do flash reviews at some point, but as far as reaction, like watching reviews, I'll never do those. Would you do a Hellraiser review is his last question. Eventually, yes. I do really like the first Hellraiser movie, and that is a franchise that eventually I would like to dive into. Once I get done with Texas Chainsaw, Chucky, and then I get to the Friday the 13th series, which pretty much everybody is clamoring for me to do, then I'll start looking at stuff like Hellraiser and other series that I don't have as much experience with. So yes, eventually, for sure, there'll be a Hellraiser review. Derek Watson. Oh, I just aired the question, sorry. Trying to scroll around. All right, just a few more, guys. Samuel One World Reviews. My question, what is your best and worst film of the year so far? Best is Logan, worst is The Bye-Bye Man. Now keep this in mind, I don't see a lot of bad movies. I used to, but now that my schedule's a little bit rough for me to find time to go to the movies, I don't use that opportunity to go see something I know is gonna be shitty. So I have not seen Transformers the last night. I didn't watch, some of the other horror movies that came out in between then, like Wish Upon and Friend Request. Those movies I know are gonna suck, but as far as the beginning of the year when I was seeing bad movies, The Bye-Bye Man definitely takes the cake. What are films that you hate but everyone loves? I'm not a Tim Burton fan, and that seems to be the one. Tim Burton movies, at least his older stuff, is like hailed. Like, people love those movies, and I'm just not a fan of them. I don't like Tim Burton's style at all, so that's just something that everybody else gets that I don't get. What are films that you love but everyone hates? I'm sure there are more to add to this list, but one movie that I always think of that cracks me the hell up, but people hate, and they actually use it as an example as a horrible movie, is Boat Trip. For those that even remember what that movie is, for those that don't, it's basically this comedy that came out in the mid-2000s with Cuba Gooding Jr., and he broke up with his girlfriend, and he's going on a cruise with his best friend to meet women, and they piss off Will Ferrell, who's the ticket agent, and he puts them on a gay cruise. So they get on a cruise, and it's nothing but homosexual men. And it's not very sensitive. If you can't laugh at homosexual or homophobic jokes, which nowadays especially is a very sensitive topic, then you're not gonna like the movie at all. But if you can find humor in situations that these guys would be put into, to me, the movie is fucking hilarious. I mean, is it a good movie? No, I'll never say it's a good movie. It's definitely a bad movie that's so bad that it's good, but it cracks me up. I haven't seen it in years, but I was bored like a week and a half ago, and when I was editing, I was watching it because it was on demand, and man, it cracks me up. It's hilarious to me. And I just lost 200 subscribers for saying that. What was the film that got you into horror movies? Child's Play 3. That was the first one I ever saw. Favorite childhood movies. If you're asking about just movies that I watched a lot in my childhood, like I said, I had more of a mature taste. So The Lost Boys, Terminator 2, the Freddy movies, the Chucky movies, Back to the Future, Star Wars, all those. If you're talking about like cartoons and like Disney style movies that I still watch today and I love a Goofy movie, the first one. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, I always like those. And the Disney Channel original movies, the ones that came out on the Disney Channel, like Horse Sense, Johnny Tsunami, Smart House. I actually came to the realization that all of those movies were on Amazon Instant Video, and I bought every single one that I used to love. Like, I have like 15 of them. And I'll tell you right now, even though it sounds strange, I will watch those while I'm editing more than anything else, because I can mindlessly watch them and love it. So I'm editing Freddy reviews and watching Johnny Tsunami. I know it's a weird world, but it happens. Number 6, how did you meet your wife? Well, we're not actually married yet. But how did I meet her? Basically, I worked at Target. I was a manager at Target. Worked there for 3 years prior to this job. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I was working there. And basically what came about was her cousin Maggie worked with me. And she always liked me. I always liked her, as far as, like, you know, respecting each other in the workplace and having fun and joking around, everything like that. And unbeknownst to me, Maggie had been telling Holly, my girlfriend, about me for the longest time. Like, you need to meet this guy. He's your perfect person. He's a dick. You're gonna love him. So she was telling Holly about me for a long time, unbeknownst to me. Well, after I had left Target and I had worked at the place that I work now, I mean, me and Maggie still kept in contact. And so, I don't remember exactly how the conversation came up. I think I was having troubles with another girl that I was trying to date, and she was just psychotic. And I was talking to Maggie about it, like, what the fuck is this bitch's problem? This makes no sense to me. And she basically said, look, forget her. I'm gonna set you up on a date with my cousin. You're gonna love her. And kind of the rest is history. We talked with each other for a little while, went on a date, and have been with each other ever since. So that's kind of how we met. Best and worst thing about doing YouTube videos. The best thing is things like this, like getting subscribers, getting people's appreciation, getting questions, getting insight into how everybody works, like talking back and forth with movie fans, like all of the interaction with all of you guys. That's the best part. That's the reason why I do it. That's the reason why I'm motivated to get a new Texas Chainsaw review out. Like, can't wait for everybody to see this. It's not for me just to say, you know, my opinion needs to be heard. It's because I want everybody to enjoy my opinion, enjoy the little skits that I come up with here and there, and the little jokes and my personality. That's the best part about it. The worst part about it, of course, I mean, this is much lower on the list than most people because I don't give a fuck about trolls, but trolls kind of suck once in a while. I've yet to have a troll that really says something that like digs deep, that like I actually get offended at. Usually I have more fun with them than they have with me. They'll try to offend me and I'll play the game with them and I'll end up pissing them off more than they piss me off. So that's kind of a pro, actually, for my sadistic sense. It's like, I like fucking with trolls. But once in a while it does get annoying when you're putting hard work out there and you got people that just want to be assholes. The other hard part about YouTube that sucks is that there's just no formula. There's no key to success. You just have to do whatever you do. Make sure your reviews or your videos are quality. Make sure your thumbnails are quality. Make sure you got all your tags straight. And once you hit upload, it's all chaos. You might have 30,000 views. You might have 15 views, and you don't know until it's out there. So that's kind of, especially when you're getting started. I've gotten mostly a handle on how to succeed now. But when you're getting started especially, that's extremely frustrating because you'll make a lot of mistakes and you'll go 7 months without knowing something that could have helped you succeed back in the beginning, and it just aggravates the shit out of you. And just the workload, really, because it seems like videos, like a movie review, should only take maybe an hour to do, to film it, to put it out there, and you know, it just automatically comes with all the transitions and everything and the editing, but it really doesn't. Like my average movie review, and I've gotten better at it now, but like back whenever I first started doing longer reviews and starting to put a lot more production into it, they could take up to 8 hours for one video. Shooting, editing, uploading, tagging, rendering, all that kind of stuff takes so much time. And that's probably the hardest part, is just finding the time and taking the time to do it all. Ryan O'Toole asks, congrats on 2000, man. Thank you. What are your top 3 movies with only one-word titles? Goodfellas, Halloween, and Warrior. Least favorite director? It's between Tim Burton and Rob Zombie. I think Rob Zombie is a much worse director than Tim Burton, so I'll probably say him. But Tim Burton, I actually like a couple of Rob Zombie's movies for some elements of it. Tim Burton, there's none of his movies that I like, so it's kind of a weird thing. One's definitely a better director, but the other one I like a few of his movies, so it's between those two. Movie reviews and rankings by Reese. Cats or dogs? Absolutely dogs. Absolutely dogs. I'm not a cat person. I have a dog. I have a husky. I'm not a fan of cats. Dylan Whitmitz asks, I'm trying to speed up a little bit, so that's why I'm getting a little faster. What is one of the most underrated horror films in your opinion? Well, I mentioned Session 9. If you're looking for another one that's really underrated is Frailty. That's directed, it might even be written too, but I know for a fact it's directed by Bill Paxton and it stars Bill Paxton. So where he gets a message from God, at least that's what he says, that he is supposed to destroy demons. In other words, there's people out there and he needs to kill them because they're demons, and he's trying to convince his 2 sons that they're on a mission from God. One son totally buys into it, the other one thinks he's psychotic and he's losing his mind. Phenomenal movie. One of the best horror movies out there that nobody talks about. Definitely check it out. Ryan Brigardis asks, do you think A Nightmare on Elm Street could work without Robert Englund? Should they try to make one without him again, or just leave it alone? You guys know I'm a Freddy fanatic. You guys know Freddy is my favorite horror icon, and I love Robert Englund. They could absolutely succeed without him. Robert Englund is great for what he brought to that role. He created Freddy for all intents and purposes. He took what Wes Craven had the ideas for, and he brought it to life. So he will never have that taken away from him. But the fact is, the character is bigger than Robert Englund. Freddy is bigger than Robert Englund. The reason why they couldn't succeed with Jackie Earle Haley is because the writing sucked and the direction sucked. And there's definitely the argument out there that some of the things that Jackie Earle Haley brought to the character that were his own little twerks didn't quite work, and that's totally fair. But there was elements that he brought to it that would succeed. Now, there's rumors out there about Kevin Bacon and all that kind of stuff, which again, it's just rumors, but like, there's plenty. There's dozens of actors out there, maybe even 100 actors, that could take the character of Freddy, and if they had good writing behind them, and they had a director that knew what the fuck they were doing, you could totally not only match what Robert Englund did, but you might even succeed and go farther than what Robert Englund brought to Freddy Krueger. Because if I'm being objective, like, look, I love Freddy, I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but there's really only 3 of them that I love. The first one, the third one, and New Nightmare. And yeah, Freddy vs. Jason, but that's kind of outside of the franchise. So half of the franchise I don't love. You could do better. You could do better with somebody else. You could do better. You could at least match it. So, controversial opinion, but I think you could. Dylan Clancy asks, if you had to have an alter ego, what would your name be and what would you do? I actually had to think about this one for a little bit because I was like, am I going to be a superhero? Is it going to be something like a vigilante thing? And for the sake of conversation, for comedy, I'm going to be called the Parenter. The reason why is because, look, even though I'm an advocate of nobody should tell anybody how to parent their kids, it's nobody else's business. Like, nobody should tell me how to parent my kids. I shouldn't tell you how to parent your kids. One of my biggest pet peeves in society right now, at least from what I see, is the fact that parents, for the most part, have just totally lost control of their kids. Kids get to run over the parents, they go out in public, they scream, they yell, they grab shit off the shelves at grocery stores, they cuss their moms out, say, fuck you mom, all that kind of stuff. All that's allowed, all of it's fine nowadays. It's like, oh, whatever, come on, stop doing that. I cannot stand that shit. So my alter ego will do some drive-by parenting. If I'm in Walmart as Cody Leach and I'm going by, and this is actually a true story, I did see this, and I look down an aisle and there's a woman sitting there pleading with her daughter who's holding onto a box of Lucky Charms and will not let them go until her mother agrees to put them in the cart, and the mother's saying, you never eat them, you just eat the marshmallows. I'm not buying that. Stop it. You're not gonna win this. And then I see them later on leave the aisle and the mother puts the damn box in the grocery cart and the kid's walking away all victorious and evil. Then I'll rush off. Dun, 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 dun. I'll run off into the phone booth, change into my outfit for the parenter, come back, grab that fucking kid, and listen, you little bitch. Listen to your mother. You're not getting this. Shit like that. I can't stand it. Not to be violent, not to shake other people's kids, but just put some fear into them. Something like the Punisher come in and like, listen, you're the fucking kid, they're the fucking adult. Listen. And then I'll grab the parent too. Listen, goddammit. They're the fucking kid, you're the adult. You're raising Hitler, motherfucker. Raise him. Stuff like that. So, rant over with, and I'm probably, again, I'm going to have a lot of debate in them. How dare you talk about kids that way? Look, there's a lot of parents out there that need to have some stern talking to by parents who are stronger parents. They can actually parent their children and don't let 5-year-olds run a 30-year-old. So, controversial opinion maybe, but again, for the sake of comedy, for the sake of answering the question in a comedic light, I will be known as the Parenter. I Hate Facebook 31184 asks, if you have seen any of the Creepshow films, which ones did you like, which ones you thought sucked? What were your favorite segments in the films? Have not seen any of them, so I'll have to skip that first part. Have you seen Sleepaway Camp? If yes, would you review it this year on my behalf? I have seen Sleepaway Camp. I'm a fan of it, at least the first one. The second one's decent. I haven't seen the third one, or the fourth one. I think there's a fourth one out there, but yeah, I like the first one. Will I review it this year? Probably not this year, no. At some point will I review it? Sure. Now, as far as your question, this is when I get to have a commercial break and plug myself. Will you review it on my behalf? If you're not aware, actually, one of the benefits for my patrons, my Patreon my Patreon and the patrons that I have over there, on 2 of my tiers over there, you can actually request a review. So if you're interested in me doing it this year, that's the best way to do it, because I'll absolutely, if you become a patron, it's no question. Yes, I'll do it absolutely on your behalf. But without that, it's just whenever I get around to it, to be honest with you. So not to make it sound like I'm holding the review hostage, it's not that way whatsoever. It's just like I said with all the other questions, will you review this? Eventually I will, yes. There's no schedule that I have. It's just, you know, if I feel like reviewing it, or if there's something coming out, like I was inspired to do Stephen King movies because it came out, then you'll get the review for Sleepaway Camp. But realistically, it'll probably be sometime next year whenever I'm gonna, you know, can't figure out what to do. It's like, you know what, I'll review Sleepaway Camp, fuck it. And your last question is, which Nightmare on Elm Street films did you like the best? Which ones you thought were a complete train wreck? Well, I do have a Nightmare on Elm Street ranking video, so check that out. I think you'll enjoy it. As far as the ones that I think are great, the first one, the third one, Dream Warriors, which is my favorite, and New Nightmare. And I really like Freddy vs. Jason. But if you're just talking about the actual Nightmare on Elm Street films, that one doesn't get discussed. So the 1, 3, and New Nightmare. Which ones do I think were a complete train wreck? Look, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as Freddy's Dead. Like, Freddy's Dead is the bottom of the barrel for horror movies for me. It's the bottom of the barrel for slashers. People love to shit on Halloween Resurrection and Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X. At least in my opinion, Freddy's Dead makes those movies look like fucking Oscar winners. So hey, we're going back to the Oscar winning controversy here. But Freddy's Dead's a piece of shit. As far as the 2, or the one right above that, is The Dream Child. I think The Dream Child sucks too. I'm not really a fan of watching that movie, but I can at least enjoy parts of that movie. Freddy's Dead, I'll never watch again for the rest of my life. Unless somebody pays me to. If I decide to do a revisited review and cuss for 30 minutes again about how bad it is, I hate Freddy's Dead. So that's absolutely the train wreck of the series. Adam Carl Green asks, hey Cody, are you a Scream fan? If yes, do you think there will be a 5th film now that Wes is gone, and do you plan to review the franchise? Yes, I am a Scream fan. I wasn't always a Scream fan, so that's actually an interesting story that I'll get into whenever I do review it. Will I review it? Absolutely. I'll probably get to that one right after, sometime at next year. Like, right after I do Friday the 13th, I'll probably do Scream, because Scream, actually, I like more than Friday the 13th, but so many people want me to do Friday the 13th, I'll probably prioritize that one a little bit more, but yes, absolutely. Will there be a 5th one? At some point there will be. There's no way they're just going to throw away Scream because Wes Craven died. Even though he's the one who's the brainchild behind it, he's the one that made every single one of them. They're not going to let it die with Wes Craven, unfortunately. So, and I think that they probably, as long as, like I say with everything else, if you have a good director and a good writer, it'll come out good. It's just a matter of if they're going to do that or not. Are they going to throw just a fucked up Scream movie out there, sequel, remake, whatever, for the sake of profiting off the name of Scream? Then it's going to be unfortunate, and it'll probably die off for a few years. Are they going to put some actual effort into it and pay respect to Wes Craven, which I hope they will? Then we'll get a good Scream movie. But eventually, yes, it'll happen. And my last question comes from Apple Tube TV. What is your favorite horror movie which is not a slasher? John Carpenter's The Thing. It's the best remake of all time, and it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time, honestly. Well, that and The Lost Boys. They're probably tied, honestly, because I always say The Lost Boys is my favorite, but whenever I think about The Thing, I'm like, you know what? The Thing's probably better than Lost Boys in some aspects. So those 2 movies are pretty much neck and neck for me. The Thing and The Lost Boys, because I grew up with The Lost Boys. That's my favorite vampire movie of all time. It's probably my favorite horror movie of all time. That's not a slasher or a monster movie or anything like that, as far as just the classic monsters, vampires, werewolves, and yes, so those 2 movies are tied for my favorite movies that are not slashers. John Carpenter's The Thing and The Lost Boys. Well, that is the end, guys. Man, this was long, so there was a ton of great questions. Hopefully I made you guys laugh a few times. Hopefully I didn't offend anybody. I hope you understand that it's all for comedy. It's to make everybody laugh, so. But I don't think anybody's going to be offended. I got some pretty thick-skinned subscribers. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you again for your questions. This was a lot of fun. I wanted to do an old school Q&A to bring back to bring in 2,000 subscribers. And again, thank you guys for getting me to 2,000 subscribers. So glad to be here. We're going to be at 3,000 before you know it. So I said I wanted it to be my goal to get to 5,000 by the end of the 2nd year that I've been on YouTube, and within a month I'm already at 2,000. So 5,000 might have been shooting a little bit too low, but we'll find out. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your questions. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, as always, you can click right over here.